gentlemen, the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this press conference. It is a great pleasure to have this press conference on the eve of a General Assembly and the Climate Change Summit. And I'm happy to share some thoughts how this General Assembly and Climate Change meeting will go, and on all other matters of our mutual concern. As you know, this morning, 2 vehicles reportedly with the UN markings were used in the suicide attack at the AMISOM compound earlier today. 9 peacekeepers, including the Deputy Force Commander, were killed. At least 30 wounded personnel are being evacuated for medical treatment. We are investigating. I expect the preliminary report shortly. I condemn this attack, this terrorist attack, in the strongest possible terms. United Nations is mobilizing all possible measures to evacuate the wounded and support the AMISOM. I am soon going to speak with the presence of Uganda and Burundi and African Union Chairman. I express my deepest condolences and sympathies to the victims and families of those killed. I honor their service and bravery. Ladies and gentlemen, this year we have so many important events and meetings on the margins of the general debate. If I may just cite some examples: the Security Council Summit to address nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament, the Quartet meeting on Middle East peace process, the UN RED event aimed at reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in developing countries, the 6th conference to facilitate the early entry into force of Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT. We also have the 60th anniversary of the UNRWA, the 60th anniversary of the Geneva Convention, the ministerial meeting on the Alliance of Civilization, the ministerial meeting of the Group of Friends on Myanmar, the summit meeting of the Group of Friends of Democratic Pakistan, the UN-ASEAN Ministerial Consultation, the UN CARICOM Mini-Summit, the UN-EU Ministerial Consultation, and many other summit-level global health-related events hosted by other world leaders, just to name a few. I have asked some of our senior officers to brief you on the matters of their respective jurisdictions over the last few days, but I also wanted to meet with you before the busy period ahead. Let me get right to the point. I believe we are at the crucial moment leading up to what promises to be a critical year for action by the global community, a year which requires decisive movement on a variety of fronts. I call it a time for renewed multilateralism that delivers for real people in real time the real results. I will speak in more detail about this next week, but let me point to the 3 reasons why I believe the upcoming General Assembly is so important. First, leaders are coming to the United Nations to address the defining challenge of our time, the climate change. No issue better demonstrates the need for global solidarity. No challenge so powerfully compels us to widen our horizon. The summit on September 22nd on climate change will be the largest ever gathering of heads of state and government on climate change. The purpose is to focus minds and generate action. The current slow pace of the negotiation is a matter of deep concern. There are only 81 days left until we go to Copenhagen and 15 days for negotiations. Time is short. The negotiations are incredibly complex. Earlier this month, I visited the Arctic. There, I could see for myself the melting glaciers. It was a frightening experience for me. Climate change is happening much faster than we realized. Our summit is about building the bridge to Copenhagen. We want world leaders to show they understand the gravity of climate risk as well as the benefits of acting now. We want them to publicly commit to sealing a deal in Copenhagen. And we want them to give their negotiating teams marching orders to accelerate progress toward a fair, effective, comprehensive, and scientifically ambitious global climate agreement in Copenhagen. Second, the international economic and financial crisis. We are now 1 year on. There is talk of green shoots of recovery, but our data show another picture. We are still not out of the deep woods, and this crisis is layered upon the food crisis and the pandemic crisis. We are finding that it is not the chronic poor who are most affected, but the near and working poor whose lives had improved significantly over the last decade. The near poor are becoming the new poor. Over 100 million people, more people are expected to fall below the poverty line this year. We simply must amplify the voices of the vulnerable and ensure that the world follows up on its pledges. At the G20 summit in Pittsburgh and here at the United Nations, we will hammer this point home. I have written to G20 leaders earlier this week and asked for their commitment to protect poor countries through the crisis and accelerate action on climate change and achieving the Millennium Development Goals. To make the right policy responses, we must know in real time what is happening on the ground. This is difficult because we don't yet have all the information we need. To address this gap, the UN system is working with member states to create a networked 21st century capacity for real-time data collection, analysis, and flagging of critical development on the ground. We are developing a global impact and vulnerability alert system, abbreviated as GIVAS, G-I-V-A-S. And I will report on the current situation of the poorest and most vulnerable to the General Assembly next week. The Deputy Secretary General will brief you and provide an advance copy on Friday, tomorrow. Third, disarmament. There is a crucial window of opportunity. The US and Russian leaders have pledged to cut their nuclear arsenals. More leaders are speaking out. The wind is at our back. With a strong push by the right leaders, we can bring the comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty into force. We can make much needed headway in nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. I'm pleased that the Security Council, chaired by US President Obama, will hold a summit meeting on September 24th to address this issue. The same day, we will also host a special meeting to press the early ratification of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Let me also touch on a few news items of this week. First, the General Assembly adopted its first resolution on the responsibility to protect. I strongly welcome their decision, and particularly pleased that support came from member states from every corner of the world. We must press forward, united by the ultimate purpose of the responsibility to protect, to save lives by preventing the most egregious mass violations of human rights. Second, Sri Lanka. I'm concerned about developments regarding internally displaced persons, the political process, and the possible accountability mechanism. I'm also deeply troubled by the continued detention without charge of the two UN staff members. I have spoken directly with the President Rajapaksa about these pressing matters last Monday. This week, I have sent the Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Lin Pascoe, to Sri Lanka to follow up. I have asked him to deliver my letter to the President outlining the concerns of the international community and immediately report back to me. We must also recall that 2 of our staff are currently being held hostage in Darfur. I can assure you that we are doing all that we can to secure their release. Finally, I want to commend the General Assembly for agreeing to my proposal to consolidate all 4 women-specific entities of the United Nations into a single one. I have been pushing this initiative for 2.5 years. This will boost our work to promote the rights and well-being of women around the world. For my part, I am proud to have appointed more women to senior posts than at any time in the UN history. This includes 9 women with the rank of Undersecretary General. The overall number of women in senior posts above the rank of Assistant Secretary General has increased by 40% in 2.5 years. On a lighter note, you may have noticed that the recent list of the Forbes magazine 100 most powerful women in the world includes 4 leaders from the UN team. Margaret Chan of the WHO, Helen Clark of UNDP, High Commissioner of Human Rights Navi Pillay, and Anne Veneman of UNICEF. Such lists are, of course, incomplete. They and our entire team are making a profound difference. I'll do my part to keep adding to the ranks. As I say, we are entering the critical moment. Starting next week, the world will be watching. The world's people expect the United Nations, together with world leaders, to address the great issues of our day. Climate change, international financial and economic crisis, the food crisis, and so many other daunting challenges. I'm sure that with a strong commitment and united leadership, we will make this year's session a great success, and I count on your support and cooperation. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take your questions.